Hello friends, here we will see the work of Wilson Knight on the principle of Shakespeare's interpretation. If you did not subscribe my channel, please subscribe for more videos like this. Let us see on the principle of Shakespeare's interpretation written by G.Wilson Knight. G.Wilson Knight was the originator of a new symbolic or spatial approach to Shakespeare. He gave new symbolic or new spatial approach to the Shakespeare's work. In an introductory essay on the principles of Shakespeare's interpretation to his work, The Wheel of Fire, which is published on 1930, he elucidated his approach to the plays more fully. He explained his method of poetic interpretation as opposed to criticism, with its distinction between spatial and temporal aspect of drama. On the Principle of Shakespeare's Interpretation is an introductory essay written to the main work of The Wheel of Fire, which is published on 1930, written by G. Wilson Knight. In this work, poet mainly explained the word poetic interpretation, also distinction between spatial and temporal aspects of drama. Knight tried to identify a play, total mood impressions or music, and to hear the music of the play is to experience Shakespeare's philosophical sensibility and to become aware of his unique poetic conception of the universe. It is Shakespeare, the poet, of comprehensive philosophic vision rather than the man of the theatre in whom Knight was interested. In this work, especially Knight said that he he took out the Shakespeare's philosophical vision regarding on his works rather than the man of theatre. He wanted to express the philosophical view of Shakespeare here. In this introductory essay to The Wheel of Fire, Wilson Knight outlines the principles in Shakespeare interpretation as practiced by him in this and other works. Here, Wilson Knight considers criticism as concretization or recovery or a work of art, very much like some reception theorities. He also includes comparison with other texts as an essential part of the criticism. In this respect, he is like T.S. Eliot, to whom analysis and comparison are essential tools of criticism. This comparison will help to distinguish the good from the bad and pass a judgment on the worth of the work. Thus, to Wilson Knight, criticism is more judicial than illuminating. He says criticism is very important when we compare two different books or works. The word merge into the work. Interpretation is a contemplative activity, a moment in the inner chamber of the text, whereas criticism is centrifugal as it approaches the text with reference to other text. Interpretation uses others mainly to understand the inner organization and theme. It is only a translation of the creative work in the language of reason. It does not judge, only illuminates. Here poet says, interpretation in the sense it helps to understand inner meaning or theme of the work. In his work, Wilson Knight gave special place to the spatial versus temporal aspect. What are they? To receive the whole Shakespearean vision into the intellectual consciousness, Wilson Knight advocates a spatial approach. Normally, we follow the stages of a story in a sequence with a beginning, middle, and end, which are logically connected. But a Shakespearean tragedy is set off both spatially and temporally in the mind. The spatial structure is formed through a set of correspondence which links the entire play in a simultaneous order, independent of the story, which is sequential. These are the intuition, intelligent opposition in the death in death team in Hamlet, evil in Macbeth, and an essential relationship between Othello. It is something like the unity of idea mentioned by Aristotle. Now we see the whole play laid out in the space in a single view where all the correspondences meet. Now we see necessity in place of false, and that necessity is both spatial and temporal. The spatial and the temporal elements are harmoniously blended in Measure for Measure, Macbeth, and King Lear. Whereas in Hamlet, as the spatial element is limited, the play is less unified and hence its interpretation not satisfactory. In Othello also, there is less spatial unity as the three chief persons are only differentiated. Then Knight talks about sources which also try to explain art in terms of casuality, the handmaid of intellect. Sources like Plutarch and the Bible are only related to externals in Shakespeare, but the source of his poetry is rooted in mental or spiritual realities which are nothing and must be mated with earthly shades. There is not only the union of the material and the spiritual, but the feminine and the masculine. The material is the feminine and the spiritual the masculine. To Wilson Knight, the real source of Antony and Cleopatra is not the old romance, but Shakespeare's poetry. In fact, the same story would have resulted in Hardy in a different kind of work. So, what matters is not the original that is fuel, but the creative flame, and this revealed in the spatial quality. Hence, interpretation seeks a reality beyond the story in the different place in which the plot is the same. But Shakespeare's art discovers the life rhythms of each play according to his own vision. To interpret a Shakespeare play in a proper way, we must see each play as a visionary whole bound together in three modes. They are: first one personification, second one suggestion, third one direct poetic symbolism. All of them must be given equal importance and we must try to reach the original vision. Each incident or detail or symbol points to an inner core which alone unifies everything. They do not relate to any outer reality but to inner core. Psychological crisis starts from the circumferences, but instead of going inwards, try to connect the events with their own life. We should consider what the characters do and not what they might have done and see everything as integral to the total poetic statement or design. Knight uses the imagery of fire to describe the soul of life of the Shakespearean play. He compares the interpreter to a scientist who splits the sunbeam into different colors. He discovers the mystery through it cannot be demonstrated, but it is also as rational as a pursuit of mathematician who writes a symbolic curve in the symbol of an algebraic equation. Wilson Knight finally sums up the main principles of Shakespearean interpretations are: each play must be seen as a visionary unit, obeying its own laws, and we must follow our imaginative reactions and accept the superlogical order. Second point, we must recognize both the temporal and the spatial elements and relate everything to the time sequence of the story and its atmosphere. Third point, we must analyze the overall poetic symbolism as well as the minor symbolic imagery and be alive to the associative value of recurring images as well as the symbolic value of effects such as discharge of cannon in Hamlet. In conclusion, Wilson Knight says that this method has been applied to the final plays in Myth and Miracle. Colin still also uses his method in Shakespeare's mystery play, A Study of the Tempest, published in the year 1921. Knight concedes that his distinction between criticism and interpretation has no universal validity and he might have been unfair to criticism. If you understood this English analyze, Please let me know in the comment box. Also like this video and please don't forget subscribe my channel. Thank you one and all.